Across North America, a growing number of pet owners are expressing doubts about vaccinating their cats and dogs. Experts say it's linked to misinformation circulating online. Tonight, we examine what's behind the spread of unvaxxed pets. A debate is unfolding online. Some pet owners claim vaccines do more harm than good, while others, including vets, insist they are safe and often essential. Tonight on the show, we'll speak with a woman who's part of a growing movement in Canada questioning pet vaccines. Plus, an expert from the Ontario Veterinary College brings us perspective from the front lines. And a researcher from Boston University shares data on pet owners' attitudes in the US and why it matters to Canada. But where did this vaccine hesitancy towards pets come from? Some researchers believe COVID-19 is to blame. Take a look. Remember the COVID-19 vaccine protests in Canada's capital? Defiant demonstrators brought Ottawa to a standstill, opposing public health measures, including vaccine mandates. The protesters are long gone, but that hesitancy towards vaccines is not. Mistrust of vaccines is still spreading online, with some parents rejecting childhood vaccines. And now there are signs of growing reluctance to vaccinating cats and dogs, even for diseases like rabies, which is almost always fatal in animals and humans. Despite evidence supporting vaccines, some pet owners believe in natural immunity and worry vaccines will have negative side effects. Others don't trust vets at all. In Canada, these beliefs appear to be gaining ground. A Facebook group for unvaccinated pet owners now has more than 30,000 members. Erica Party is one of those members. She has two dogs, a Belgian Malinois named Granite and a Whippet named Cranberry. She lives with them in Newfoundland. Erica, thanks so much for being a part of our show today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So you have decided not to vaccinate your dogs. Tell me why.
It's been a long time coming. I haven't vaccinated my dogs in 30 years, other than puppies that have come to me from breeders that have done initial puppy shots. But I find myself to be a qualified caregiver, so I have a lot of experience in alternative medicine, so I'm able to thwart things that may potentially go wrong if things do. But fingers crossed, I've never had any reactions or issues by not vaccinating my animals.
Like in terms of their health, they've been relatively healthy?
They've been very healthy, and I've never picked up any kind of communicable disease while owning them.
And are they mostly dogs that stay in the house? Are they dogs that go out, in the wilderness as well? Or is it kind of a mix?
Yeah, I have everything. I've competed. I have hunting dogs, working dogs, small dogs, you name it. There's been a gamut of different sizes and breeds and stuff. So it's not limited to household pets.
Okay. So I've been reading some of your blog posts. I know that you are interactive with the animal community. And one of the things that you wrote, is follow the money, not the fear, when it comes to vaccines. Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, it basically comes down to, you have to look at who's behind pushing these vaccination schedules. There's an agenda, in my opinion. A lot of it is based on fear mongering and taking away your right to decide what's best for you and your pet and the situation you're in. So I always say, look at things with a critical lens and decide what's best for you. It's not a one size fits all, in my opinion. Each dog and every animal is different, and it's basically your comfort level. That's really what it comes down to, your choice, your comfort level.
So let's talk about the rabies vaccine. I mean, it's extremely protective. And rabies in almost every case is when it reaches the brain for animals or humans is fatal. That we do know. Are you at all concerned about your unvaccinated dogs, getting infected?
No, not at all. I guess if I was running a pack of beagles or a pack of hunting hounds through the woods in an American state that had high incidences of rabies, Yeah, I would want them protected. Absolutely. But it just isn't the case, is it, for most pets? We're not in high rabies areas. We're not letting our dogs run through the forest and the woods unsupervised. I think we reached a point where we were a rabies safe. I'm not sure, we weren't a rabies free, but there's another place that we've reached with Canada as far as the rabies vaccine. And do you really need to give a rabies vaccine to a 3-pound Yorkshire Terrier that's never out of your sight, doesn't leave your house practically? It's common, I just want to see informed choice and informed decisions. Why do you have to push these things? It's what's the agenda behind it? And, what's the financial gain behind pushing these vaccinations on pets like that?
It sounds like you want more conversations around this and more information, which, we all should be talking to each other. So I think that's a good thing. A group that is talking is this Facebook group that has 30,000 people, at least vaccine hesitant at the minimum. Do you agree with, the voices in the room, in that room?
I agree with their concern. I agree with their, desire for knowledge. I agree with their need for transparency, because that's what it's about. It's a group of people sitting in a virtual room talking about the fact that they want more information and they want to be considered. They don't want to be lumped into a zealot group of people that are anti-vaxxers, because that's not really what they are. They're people wanting information, and they find comfort, I guess, from other people that have had experiences, some of them really bad experiences with vaccinations with their pets.
Do you find that there is misinformation as well, though, circulating in that group? Like, is it a mix?
Of course, there's misinformation on the allopathic and Western medicine side of things too, saying that vaccinations is a one size fits all, and you get it on both sides. Whenever anybody's whenever there's an emotional component to it, you get all kinds of information. It really goes across the board. That unfortunately, whenever there are human beings involved, there's going to be corruption and greed and misinformation, and it's just the way it goes. So you have to take things with a grain of salt. You have to investigate and do your own research and talk to people who have the information until you find something that that makes sense.
I'm curious about that 30,000 person Facebook group. Like, you have a spectrum of views on there. So at what point does it get dangerous in terms of, putting out maybe bad information or not well-researched information?
So my approach to people who are inexperienced is to follow the science. I never recommend anybody going out who live in a city and is going to dog parks and training classes and, to risk their pets without having some basic knowledge of alternative medicine, or to be able to treat particular issues that may come up. Nothing can take the place of veterinary medicine if you don't know and don't have the background of knowledge that you need to be able to avoid it, if that makes any sense.
So do you have a straight substitute for a vaccine for your dogs? Like, what is the alternative medicine substitute?
So I'm a homeopath, right? So I've studied homeopathy for 20 plus years. Homeopathy has worked wonders for me. But I guess the biggest thing is that a lot of people, I avoid dog parks. I avoid, places where there's question as to the quality of the type of care that goes into animals. For example, like I wouldn't want to walk into a place where there are sick animals.
Erica, do you feel like people that are pet vaccine hesitant are villainized?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Anybody who's questions science is villainized, in my opinion.
And what would you like to see change?
I would like to see an integrative approach, both for humans and for animals. I think it's very egotistical for people to really believe that there's one size or one for everything. I think science has, over history, has made enough mistakes to realize that science is always evolving as well. And I think that why can we not all sit together to find out what is absolutely the best? At the end of the day, everybody wants the absolute best for them, for their pets.
I know every pet parent out there for their dog or their cat just wants to do the best for them. So thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Erica's story is part of a larger trend. In the US, a 2023 study suggests many dog owners have doubts about vaccines, and some of their concerns can be traced back to misinformation. Matt Mata is an associate professor of health policy at Boston University. And on this side of the border, we have Scott Weiss, a vet and professor at the Ontario Veterinary College at the University of Guelph. Matt and Scott, great to have you on the program today.
Thanks for having us.
Matt, I'll start with you. You published a study called Sick as a Dog, which looks at, dog owners and their beliefs about vaccines. What did you find?
Yeah, so about half of Americans hold at least some skeptical views toward vaccinating their pets. We found that notably close to 1 in 3 Americans felt that the rabies vaccine could cause their pets to develop a form of canine autism, which is not a real diagnosis that most veterinary professionals would recognize, and that ultimately these views lead to people being a bit more likely to say that they would forego vaccinating their pets if given the chance.
So let me ask you, Scott, you're the vet in the room. We're hearing this new term, PAWtism. Is vaccine hesitancy around that something you're seeing in Ontario?
We don't have a lot of information on hesitancy. We know it exists. We know there's some similarities with human vaccine hesitancy, but it's a different area too. And some of the reasons for people being hesitant are different. We certainly don't have anything that would suggest there's an autism equivalent in dogs or that it's linked to vaccination, but these things get ingrained in the public and it's hard to dispel misinformation like that.
Yeah, so where are these ideas coming from, Matt? Because I know your research is looking at the pipeline here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question from my research and work from my colleagues that the COVID-19 pandemic really changed the game. The way that Americans feel about the COVID-19 vaccine and the hesitancy that some brought with them following these mass vaccination campaigns has spilled over to shape the way that people feel about seasonal flu vaccination, vaccines for kids, and ultimately whether or not they want to vaccinate their pets. So we see a very clear transmission of those attitudes from the pandemic to the way that people feel about vaccinating their pets.
So Scott, I wonder if that's happening in Canada too. Like, how often are your colleagues having vaccine skeptical people bring in their pets?
I'd say it's a little less common in Canada, and I think the reasons can be a little bit different between Canada and the US by talking to people there. We've always had some degree of hesitancy, fatigue. There are various reasons why people can be reluctant to get their animals vaccinated. But I think, as was said, the COVID pandemic has changed the game quite a bit and has brought in mistrust as a much broader component, mistrust of rules in general, mistrust of pharma, mistrust of veterinarians, where in the past, I think we've had more concern about the animal health aspect and people looking for alternative strategies or seeing things that scared them online. Now we're starting to see a little more drifting over to the conspiracy, the mistrust, the misinformation driving.
It sounds like it's making your job harder.
Well, it makes it hard because we can't just address it one way. If it was just a matter of people are afraid because of adverse events, we can educate that a little bit, right? We can bring in data, we can reassure them. But the first step of that vaccine hesitant owner of an animal is we got to figure out why. Because if they're dogmatically opposed to vaccines, they're wary of pharma, they're wary of costs, they're concerned about adverse events, they don't trust vets. These are all very different situations and they need a very different response. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach.
Matt, when you look at misinformation online around pet vaccines, what is the one thing that most concerns you?
One thing that I think is really important for folks to understand is that there is a growing link between the Make America Healthy Again movement led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here in the United States and the way that people feel about vaccinating their pets and what they put in their pets' bodies. Some of the key figures in the pet vaccine skepticism movement are folks who have very close ties to the Make America Healthy Again movement here in the United States. And that is very much borne out in our research when we see a tight link between the way that people feel about vaccinating people and the way that they feel about vaccinating their pets. That correspondence not only increases the breadth of this movement, but makes it easier for people's political feelings to influence the way that they feel about vaccinating.
So Scott, we, talked to a pet owner, Erica, who has not vaccinated her dogs. And one of the claims that she says is that, large vet chains are pushing more vaccines to line their pockets. It's, big conglomerates making lots of money. What would you say to her?
Well, I think that's the concern we've had for years because that's what people see. And I think there's been this disconnect, and part of it's the veterinary profession's fault is we focused on vaccines, where we want to see the animal regularly. We want to see your dog or cat every year so we can identify problems because your dog doesn't necessarily tell you what's going on, right? So we find things, and we've often driven that by saying you need to come in for your vaccines, and then we're going to find out all these other things. And that gets people focusing on all I'm doing at the vet is getting vaccines. It's costing me this much versus we're approaching this as a comprehensive health exam, and you'll get vaccines if you need them, but we're doing everything else. So we've poorly kind of positioned ourselves in healthcare and veterinary medicine, really focused on vaccines. And when people get hesitant with vaccines, that really affects the overall healthcare. And I think the other challenges we do vaccinate animals more than we do people. And there are a few reasons for that. Some of that is the disease risk they have. Some of that is what we know about the vaccines and how well they protect. And some of this is the unknown. And we don't have data that say you can vaccinate, less in some situations. We've changed how we vaccinate. We're vaccinating less than we used to 20 years ago. We probably could do even less, but if we don't have evidence to support that, it becomes very difficult to make changes.
So are you telling me that we could be over vaccinating right now?
Well, I know if over-vaccinating is really the word, but for example, we vaccinate against some diseases every 3 years. And we do that because we know it works if we do it every 3 years. We don't know it doesn't work if we do it 4 or 5 years. So there may be situations where we could go longer with our intervals, but when the vaccine label doesn't say that, when the guidelines don't say that, when we don't have supporting data, it's hard to recommend it because if I recommend that, I'm going against the data that I have.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there is some nuance and context there, but it sounds like there might be different options if we have more data. We don't have the data right now, so we got to be extra cautious. I just want to ask about the risk because I think that is a really key part of this. What is the risk to other animals if, let's say, a dog is not vaccinated, Scott?
It's there. The big risk for unvaccinated animals is to that animal. So if I don't vaccinate my dog against distemper, for example, my dog's more likely to get distemper and is more likely going to die. So reducing vaccination of dogs isn't going to let distemper establish itself in dogs in Canada because it's already here. But it's going to cause more disease in those dogs that are unvaccinated. And we can get spillover effects because just like in people, in people, we try to vaccinate everyone so we protect the people that can't be vaccinated. And we have the same situation in dogs and cats with a young puppy, for example. I can vaccinate it, but only at a certain age, and I can't be confident it's protected until it's at least 4 months old. So the more dogs we have that get distemper because they're not vaccinated, the more risk we have of infecting those unvaccinatable puppies and killing them. And some of these diseases can be fairly devastating. So we do have spillover effects into other animals. And for diseases that can go from dogs and cats to people, we have a human spillover risk as well. So it gets very complex.
And is that spillover risk very high?
It's probably very low overall for humans.
Okay.
There are a couple of things we'd be concerned about, but some of them are high consequence. So the risk of problems with rabies is low. Your average dog or cat is fairly low risk of exposure, but if it gets rabies, it's going to die. And if it gets rabies, there's going to be a public health investigation of who it might have infected. That gets very time consuming, very expensive. People that have been exposed need post-exposure prophylaxis. So even if no one got rabies from the dog, we're often seeing tens or more thousands of dollars being put into this. So there are significant impacts when we see diseases that were vaccine preventable.
Matt, I haven't forgotten about you. Listening to all that context and nuance, how should people maneuver the information that's out there when it comes to vaccines for their pets?
There's so much misinformation out there. And I think that listening to folks like Scott is one of the best things that pet owners can do. One common piece of misinformation that I see out there quite often is, well, my pet doesn't interact with many other pets. Why should I have to vaccinate my dog or my cat? Why can't I just test every so often to see whether or not my dog or cat has antibodies to fill in the blank disease? And as Scott rightly noted, the issue here is that your dog, your pet can come into contact with infectious diseases in ways that you may not recognize immediately. And that poses a public health risk, not just to our four-legged friends, but to the people who take care of them, both their parents and veterinary professionals. So I think it makes a lot of sense for folks to have those conversations with their veterinarian, and for veterinarians to engage meaningfully on these issues and talk to people about them, try to walk them through, just like Scott is right now. To me, this is the best kind of conversation that we can have.
Scott, anything you'd like to add?
The worst thing you can do with someone that's vaccine hesitant is dismiss them, right? If nothing else, they need to feel heard. Because if you dismiss them, we lose trust, and we lose maybe the client, but we lose the ability to do other things with their healthcare. So we need to engage them. And at some point, you might just say, okay, well, this isn't a hill I'm going to die on, right? You don't want to vaccinate. That's fine. Here are the issues. We'll just document in your record you didn't want to. And here are the things I really want to worry about. So maybe I won't worry about this vaccine, but I really want you to get a rabies vaccine. But we have to be able to have these discussions.
We all got to talk to each other a little more. Matt, Scott, great to have you both on the program today.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Is there a story or two that stumped you this week? It's time to clear up some confusion in the headlines. Have you seen videos like this on TikTok? Influencers inhaling high concentrations of carbon dioxide to gain energy or help cure disease? Viral posts like these are claiming that breathing in large amounts of this gas, also known as CO2, can heal or improve conditions from anxiety to impotence to paralysis. One so-called scientist with more than 120,000 followers even claims it can change your sexual orientation. This isn't just a viral TikTok trend. It comes from some obscure research Agence France-Presse traced back to a Hungarian book published in the 1950s. So is there truth to any of the health claims? I wouldn't hold your breath. Carbon dioxide is normally what you exhale at the end of every breath. There's little evidence that extra CO2 in your body is good for you. And health authorities warn that inhaling too much of it can make you pass out or even suffocate. Plus, it should go without saying, no amount of huffing gas is gonna change who you're attracted to.
Buckaroo! Buckaroo! Buckaroo!
If you grew up with this friendly character, you probably remember Quebec trying to separate from Canada in the 90s. But did you hear that Nunavut might be the next region at risk of leaving the country? If you did, you've been misled. Some viral accounts have been spreading the story that the territory is working on a project to take control of its land away from the federal government. That part's actually true. But it's also true that there's no plans to make Nunavut any less a part of Canada. It's a legislative process called devolution, and it has way less to do with redrawing borders than it does with deciding which level of government is in charge of water or natural resources. Plus, Canada's other two territories already did this more than a decade ago. So I wouldn't expect passport checks anytime you visit Iqaluit anytime soon. And finally, the holiday season is just getting started. But some are already hard at work trying to steal Christmas, or at least try and convince you to gamble away some gift buying money. Local outlets in Toronto were recently warning about a fake website posing as a place to buy tickets for this year's holiday market in the Distillery District. The unofficial site, which seemed to resemble an old version of the real webpage, featured ads for a Christmas-themed online casino. The event's organizers said they reported the site to Toronto police, and the fake page's URL no longer seems to work. But if you're looking to get in on this year's festivities, here's the link to the real site. And that's your reality check. Happy holidays!
Not sure who to trust in a world of misinformation? Come to Big If True. Find us on Instagram and YouTube. Visit our website for extra content. Email us to get your thoughts on the show.
Canadians love their pets, and we know owners just want to keep their cuddly canines and furry felines safe. We hope the discussion today spurs helpful conversations in your households. We'll see you next Sunday or anytime online.